Hi everyone. A very good morning to those who are joining us from the US, and a good evening to those who are joining us from East Africa. I didn't realize I was speaking to myself. So welcome to our today's webinar. It's the Home Decor and Fashion Accessories webinar, and the theme is Doing Business with the US. My name is Liane Kamau. I'll be your moderator for the day. I work as a knowledge management and communication specialist for the USAID TradeHub East Africa. I'm based in Nairobi. So I want to give us an overview of what we can expect. We have two sets of three 15-minute presentations from 6 highly distinguished speakers from East Africa and from the US. Each of these sets will be followed by a moderated 10-minute question and answer session. And we will be giving you an opportunity to engage with our presenters during the question and answer session. And I want to encourage you to put your questions in the chat box, and you would indicate the presenter you want to respond to your question. So when we come to the end of the session, we are going to answer your questions. And if we have more time, we'll invite you to ask the question directly. However, in case we do not have ample time, we will get all your questions and we will ask our presenters to respond to them, and we will share the responses with you using the address that you'll have shared with us. So at the end of this session, we'll be expecting to get some feedback from you because we want to know how best to engage with you. We want to know how to support you. And so we will be asking that you give us your feedback on how the session was and some of the future topics that you'd want us to have. And we will have that within a short time. So I will ask my colleague to link up to share the link, to post that link in the chat box in a few minutes. I'll tell you when. And so you're going to help us with this feedback so that we can know how to improve future events and how to engage with you. We are planning to end this session at exactly 6 p.m. And before we begin, I just want to highlight a few issues. The first of them is that this session is being recorded, and we are doing this purely for internal purposes. We want to use these materials for capacity building efforts, including training. So you will note that this session is being recorded. And I want to ask you to please mute your microphone and have your video off to minimize background noises and disruptions. And as I have mentioned, we'll be giving you an opportunity to have your mics on and video on when you'll be asking the question when we have time, if we have time, as I have said. So at this point, I want to request my colleague Naima to post the link of the feedback form. And the reason I'm asking this is because I would want you to copy that link in a separate browser so that it will be very easy for you to be able to use it to fill in the feedback responses. And I don't want to wait that until the end of the session. So Naima, if you can kindly put that link on the chat box so that we can have people copy it. So we have shared that link. Please copy it in a browser so that it will be easy for you to give us your feedback at the end of the session or in case you need to leave early. So I'm just giving you a few seconds to do that. Jane Ohas, kindly switch off your video and switch off your microphone. I believe you have copied that link, so thank you for that. We will be sharing these presentations using the email address that you'll have shared with us. So don't feel pressure to take notes because we'll be sharing that later. And I just wanted to let us know that when you are joining into this webinar, you are required to register. However, we know that there might be some technical challenges that might force you to drop off and you may want to get in again. At some point, I'll ask Naima to share another link that you will use so that you can get directly into the meeting room without having to re-register again. So please take note of that link when Naima posts it. So with that, I want to invite our project director, Margaret Waithaka, who will provide an overview of the USAID TradeHub East Africa and about this webinar. Over to you, Margaret. Mary Stella, please share the screen.
So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I know it's been a very busy week just before Easter, but I really appreciate you taking the time to share this 2-hour session with us. My name is Margaret. I work for the USAID TradeHub. I'm based in Nairobi, and we work on a project called USAID TradeHub, which is a short name for the USAID Southern Africa Trade and Investment Hub. So I'll give a very brief overview of what we do and how we do it, with the intention that some of you may want to engage with us further and participate in our activities. So essentially, this is a one-day capacity building webinar. It's not even one day, it's a couple of hours, but we believe that the US and East African perspectives that you will gain from this activity will actually help you, first of all, to understand about the USAID TradeHub East Africa activity. Secondly, to provide you with information on developments in the US market, in the home decor and fashion accessories market, and also East Africa's capacity to supply the US industry's requirement. Thirdly, you'll be able to have some shared learning amongst the members who are present. And lastly, to network and possibly create new business linkages for yourself. So the USAID TradeHub is a short name for the USAID Southern Africa Trade and Investment Hub. This is a project of the US government through the USAID, US Agency for International Development. And we're working, despite the fact that we're under the Southern Africa Trade Hub, we're actually working in East Africa. So we work in 5 East African countries: Ethiopia, Kenya, Rwanda, Tanzania, and Uganda. And our main objective is to promote economic activity within these countries, but with particular emphasis over the 18 months on two-way trade and investment between the US and the 5 countries I mentioned, with an emphasis on the Prosper Africa initiative, with a focus on, first of all, expanding exports to the US under AGOA. AGOA is the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act. It provides for duty-free access for over 6,400 products or tariff lines, where eligible countries in East Africa, including the above 5, can export, actually from Africa, can export to the US without paying duty. Secondly, we were looking at supporting the flow of technology, capital, and investment from East Africa to the US, from the US to East Africa, I beg your pardon. So this kind of flow of technology means purchasing of equipment or technology or apps from the US, and also seeking investment and capital from the US into East Africa businesses. Thirdly, we'll be facilitating reduction in barriers to trade within East Africa. East Africa is a critical region for trade, and intra-regional trade is important. So this long name we have for our sector, home decor, fashion accessories. Next slide. Home decor and fashion accessories sector. What does it actually mean? Sector definition is functional or decorative items to be accessories for your body or to accessorize your home. All right? So your body or your home. So you can think of all the things you can do other than wearing clothes or painting your walls or furnishing your house. Anything else you put in your house over and above things which, like the real furniture, those are all accessories. So home decor accessories actually help you to decorate your home. Similarly, when you're wearing clothes, sometimes you wear jewelry, you wear a hat, you have a belt, maybe you have a handbag or a pouch or something that helps to complete your look as a person, and also that has some functional value. So these are the products we're focusing on. In terms of the specific product groups, we're talking about carved wooden articles. I showed you some samples earlier, basketry, stone sculptures, and in this case, stone could mean granite, marble, or even soft stones like Kisi soapstone. Works of art, paintings and antiques, articles of leather, handbags and travel goods, other made-up textile articles and sets such as rugs, bedspreads, tablecloths, runners, serviettes, table mats, all those kind of things. Jewelry of different types, and I've seen a sample here from Azizi in Rwanda, and then ceramic pottery. These are the main groups. It's not a fully comprehensive list, but that will give you an idea of the kind of products we are looking at. So how do we work as a project? We work, as I said, under the USAID Southern Africa Trade Investment Hub, but work in East Africa. So our activity in East Africa is called the East Africa Trade Promotion and AGOA activity. We have 5 major lines of effort. First of all, we make available US end market information for the targeted products, such as for home decor. So what these are basically are reports reporting on the size of the market, who are the key players, what are the rules, what are the requirements, what are the tariffs, all the information that you need if you wanted to get into that market. Secondly, we are working with individual enterprises through mapping, capacity building like this webinar, and coaching. So Margaret Bishop, who you'll see later, is the sector consultant, and she's the one who has been working with individual enterprises who have been mapped. So if you want to join our program, you haven't been mapped, we'll share an email at the end where you can reach out and you can know how to be mapped so that you can join the activities. Thirdly, we are linking the enterprises from East Africa to US markets, US capital, and US technology. And we'll explain once we engage with you how this works. But we have a number of B2B activities. We have mini trade shows and other activities like introductions, which help you as an East African exporter to get together with a US buyer based on a selection basis. The other thing is we're also linking East African associations for the sector to US private sectors associations, so that beyond the life of our activity, which will end at the end of August, we will have a way that we can sustain those business relationships through the trade associations. And last but not least, we're doing a bit of trade policy analysis and review for the East Africa region to support USAID's efforts. In terms of the sectors, those are the 5 sectors. Let me go through them: apparel and PPE, specialty foods, including teas and coffees, footwear or shoes, the one we are doing today, home decor and fashion accessories, and last but not least, essential oils and natural oils. In terms of how to work with us, the first thing is really to get in touch. So I suggest you look at those details there, and you'll be able to email us or contact us. I'm sure you've all received an email, so at least most of you should be able to contact us through email and ask any questions which you wish. And the last slide, you can see there's a picture of Lawrence Muse from Tanzania. The products he's holding are exhibits he was showing at a big trade show in, I think it was 2017 or 2018 in Frankfurt, a trade show called Ambiente. And that time we were working on the previous TradeHub, and the products he's showing there, the ones at the front, he was assisted to redesign through technical assistance from the previous TradeHub, just for your information. So anyone interested in those products, contact Lawrence Muse in Tanzania. So I'll stop there and encourage you to participate actively in this webinar. We look forward to your engagement, your active questions, and please enjoy yourselves. I'm sure it will be a fantastic 2 hours. Thank you very much. Over to you, Leanne.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Margaret, for that very comprehensive overview. Now, I want us to invite our first speaker of the day. Our speaker is Margaret Bishop. Margaret is our home decor and fashion accessories market linkage consultant working with us here at the USAID TradeHub East Africa. Margaret, she is a global supply chain and trade consultant with over 20 years of experience. She has worked extensively in building export of goods from Africa to the United States and AGOA, as well as working across other regions in the world. In addition to her worldwide consulting, she teaches textiles, supply chain management, and global business at New York City's leading fashion and design universities. Welcome very much, Margaret Bishop.
Thank you, Margaret and Naima and Leanne. I'm the other Margaret in this event this morning. I am Margaret Bishop, based in New York City, and welcome, good afternoon to all of those of you who are in East Africa, and good morning to those of you who are in the United States as I am. It's a pleasure to be part of this webinar, and I'm going to be talking about the US market from today moving forward, 2021 and beyond. Many of you have some good experience exporting to the United States market, and I hope that you will continue to build on that success. Others of you have explored it but have not yet begun exporting to the US, and hopefully today's webinar and the other activities the TradeHub is undertaking will help get you into the US market. But I can say that because of COVID-19, that has been a real game changer in everything about the US market. And so much of what you've learned in the past is still very relevant, but there are important things to be aware of going forward. So this morning or this afternoon, I'm going to talk about the opportunities as I see them for East African producers such as yourselves wanting to export to the US market. I'm going to talk about the key challenges in the US market. And I'm going to talk a little bit about market trends for 2020 and beyond. So as Margaret Waiteka already mentioned, there are a number of product categories that enjoy AGOA eligible status and that allow for duty-free entry into the United States. She briefly outlined those categories. I have them listed here as well based on their harmonized schedule, tariff schedule codes. And I also indicate the ones that are eligible for duty-free entry in the US under GSP, the General Systems of Preferences. I will say that that expired, GSP expired at the end of 2020, and we're awaiting reauthorization. But irrespective of that, you have a lot of great products that are eligible for duty-free entry into the United States under AGOA. And in this presentation this morning and in the work that I've been doing with the TradeHub, it's the articles of leather, articles of wood, the basketry, some of the textile made-up products, and some of the jewelry that are of the most keen interest to the US market currently. So we have three major forces in effect in the United States right now and have for the past year or so that have come together to create what we sometimes refer to as a perfect storm, a time where three major forces converge and in doing so amplify the impact of each of the forces individually. So while I'm going to talk about these three forces individually, I'm also going to say a few words about how they have combined to create particular opportunities for East African firms. Those three forces are greatly increased environmental awareness and concern, social activism and a real hunger for social change, and of course the COVID-19 pandemic, which has ravaged countries all around the world and particularly hit the United States hard economically, in addition to health-wise with loss of life. So the three of these, while individually, they're each very important forces right now and going forward in the United States, together they have an even greater impact that provides opportunities for you. Environmental awareness. There have been a number of activities and individuals that have really helped foster a growth in awareness of environmental impact in the United States and worldwide. You know, we've seen very young activists such as Greta Thunberg, who have had a worldwide platform raising awareness about the change in the environment, the impact of our behavior as human beings on our environment, and the very urgent need to change our behaviors to reduce environmental impact significantly. It's been widely documented over the past few years that the younger generation of consumers in the United States is particularly passionate, particularly well-informed and passionate about environmental impact. And while we used to see them saying things like, I want to reduce my environmental impact, we're starting to see them saying, I am choosing to shop only those brands that help me reduce my environmental impact. We're starting to see them influence their older siblings, their parents, and their grandparents in purchasing decisions selecting products and brands that are more environmentally friendly, that are more sustainable, that either in their use of materials or their processing or their use as a finished product help reduce our environmental footprint. So this notion of environmental awareness has finally started to really take hold, in addition to consumers increasingly demanding good environmental stewardship from the products that they choose. We are seeing brands and retailers finally, in a big way, embracing sustainability and embracing the importance of reducing their environmental impact through their selection of raw materials, the processing methods that they accept or approve, through their packaging, through their messaging. And so we're not only seeing it at the consumer level, that consumer demand, but we are seeing the brands and retailers finally responding in a big way. You know, for years, they've been putting pretty pictures on their annual reports and putting pretty pictures on their websites and so forth. Today, they are actually putting the work behind those pretty pictures. They are selecting more carefully their raw materials, their products, the processes that they accept, and their packaging and so forth. And they are communicating those messages in a very loud way to the marketplace. So the brands and retailers that are winning in the marketplace are very often those that have the more environmentally friendly products. Some of the products that some of you produce, and by all means, in the slides that I show, if you don't see your product, one of your products pictured, it doesn't mean that it doesn't have a great opportunity in the marketplace. I just tried to select a few photos from those I had access to that are representative of products that really fit well with the opportunities I'm discussing. So the upcycled wine bottles, there are a couple of producers that produce some great products with those, great stories behind those, and yet also very attractive, very serviceable products for the US market. Reusable tote bags, whether the materials have been recycled, as in the case of some of the Dow sales that one producer uses, or from the Kitenge fabrics, or from recycled supply bags, whatever, rice bags and such. Reusable bags are not only required in many US cities today. In New York City, the grocery stores and the drugstores can't give you a plastic bag. You have to either bring your own bag, or they have to give you a paper bag, or sell you a paper bag, or sell you a reusable bag. So tremendous opportunity for really attractive, interesting, reusable tote bags that have a great story behind them. Upcycled products such as the upcycled denim floor mats. Again, great story, great usable product that serves a purpose in our homes, and has a great story behind it. So part of the opportunity for you is making sure that you're using sustainable raw materials, things like vegan leather in place of some of the real leather, upcycled glass, recycled, other recycled materials or sustainable materials. Part of it is the processes that you use and reducing waste of any sort in your processing, making sure that you really reduce to the greatest degree possible the creation or generation of any waste in your processing, and telling your story about the sustainability or the environmental friendliness of your product. Social change, second big force in the US marketplace that many of you have heard about in some ways. There are a number of of issues about which that have galvanized social change, social activism, a demand for social change in the U.S. We have issues around the LGBT community. We have, in particular interest to many of you, is a movement that we have named Black Lives Matter, but is emblematic of a greater hunger for inclusivity and for respecting individuals of different communities. In the case of your firms, many of your firms are Black owned. Certainly all of your firms, you are engaging producers and suppliers who are Black. While the Black Lives Matter movement in the United States is, in the eyes of the brands and retailers, a bit more focused on US Black-owned firms and engaging them as vendors. Nonetheless, by extension, this does provide opportunity for you, and the degree to which your products, your imagery, your producers reflect an inclusivity that meets this hunger by Americans to be more respectful, to be more inclusive, to be more engaging of others from different races and different ethnicities, that provides an opportunity for you. So it may be showcasing the producers of your product. It may be using those great, lively, feel-good kitenge fabrics. It may be embracing and using the beadwork capacity that is so incredible in East Africa. Things that hearken to heritage of African Americans and Africans in the United States. Things that hearken to engaging and embracing individuals of different ethnicities, showcasing those of you who particularly focus on providing employment for women and economic opportunities and other opportunities for women. That's also part of this being more inclusive and fits very well with not only consumer demand for being better global citizens and embracing inclusivity and engaging in a very respectful, meaningful way individuals of different cultures, different ethnicities and races and so forth, but it also gives the brands and retailers an opportunity to showcase that they are doing the same thing. The third force is the COVID-19 pandemic. And this has had a number of different impacts on the US market. One of them is tremendous loss of life, which has touched every person living in America, as well as many people living around the world. But I don't know anyone among my friends, my colleagues, my students, and my neighbors who don't know someone who has died of COVID. I know many people who have lost their jobs and therefore their incomes because of COVID. But at the same time, I know a lot of people as well who, because we haven't been able to go to restaurants and Broadway shows, and we've been working from home and haven't needed to update our wardrobes and so forth, we haven't been spending money or haven't been spending as much money. So we have money to renovate our homes, to redecorate our homes, to buy accessories for our homes, because that's where we're spending 99% of our time. And so not only have we started looking around our homes and saying, you know, this is a little bit outdated, or, oh, isn't that a great pillow? Let me get that for my sofa that I'm now spending hours on every day. and so forth. So this has opened up a great opportunity for home decor products, and particularly those home decor products that also tie into that social change and or environmental awareness and demand, those forces as well. So again, a lot of great products coming out of East Africa, and the basketry, the carved wood, the home textiles and so forth that fit in this opportunity. So then I will say that we're in the process of updating the US end market analysis report, and you will see these three forces talked about in much more detail in that report. I'd also like to, so while in this webinar, for brevity, I refer to them as environmental awareness, social change, and COVID-19. You can see that in the report, I have named them slightly differently with slightly longer names. In the case of all three of them, one of the things that is extremely important is traceability and visibility of the entire supply chain, where those raw materials are coming from, who is making the product, how are they being made, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. So with these three forces, they fit together, as I said, like a perfect storm, or in the mathematical context, like a Venn diagram. And the area where two of them or all three of them intersect is where you've got the greatest market opportunity. But in any of those three forces, you have tremendous opportunities for your product. So I want to say just a few more words about what the US market trends favor. They favor products that reduce environmental harm through their raw materials, their production, and or their use. They offer great opportunities for raw materials and skills widely available in East Africa for women and Black-owned businesses and businesses that add diversity to sourcing. For products that reflect and honor self-identification with individual communities, such as the Black community, the African diaspora, and people that are concerned about women's issues and so forth, and products that further a sense of individual well-being, safety, and self-care, particularly within the home. So what this brings me to next are the challenges in the US market. These are the need for this transparency and traceability. We have growing regulations and restrictions in the US market. We have an increased need for certification, whether it's things like the FSC Forest Stewardship Council, it is organic or fair trade certification, or it is WRAP certification for sewing facilities. These kinds of certifications all give confidence to a US buyer. In the cases of those of you who are using leather in particular, it is very important that you get that leather, each color and each batch, tested by an independent third-party lab that can certify it does not contain any of a growing list of banned or restricted substances. Some of the concerns in the US market in terms of restrictions. Okay, so you have what I refer to as the 3 R's, the requirements from the brands and retailers, from your wholesale buyers. And then you have the government regulations and government restrictions about use of raw materials, about who produces your goods, no prison labor, forced labor, or child labor allowed. Certain dyes and chemicals have been banned. Today, we now have a ban in the United States of products containing cotton from the Xinjiang region of China. And these are all outlined in the exporter manual that you'll all have a chance to get. So these just briefly are some of the regulations, the rules of origin under AGOA and GSP. California Transparency in the Supply Chain Act requires that you state publicly what you are doing to ensure that there is no forced labor anywhere in your supply chain. So that means brands and retailers want proof that you are trying to make sure you have no forced labor in your supply chain. The manufacturing restricted substances list and the restricted substances list, that you need to have your products tested, particularly your leather. Bans on conflict minerals and conflict cotton, and the ban on the Xinjiang cotton. Both explained in the exporter's manual. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, certifications and independent testing are the best things to help you ensure these for your potential customers. So in home decor, I want to talk now just very briefly about the color and texture trends because everybody wants to know about that. First thing I'm going to say is there is no right color and there is no wrong color. You know, we tend to want to focus on, okay, who said what did this organization say are the right colors for next spring? It doesn't really work that way. And if what you try to do is get that information and follow that, that's not going to serve you well. What is more important is understanding that those color trends come from what's going on in the market and the world currently. How does that make consumers feel? And how do we want to feel? And what colors and textures will help us feel that way? So based on the things that have been going on in the US market, looking forward, the kinds of colors and textures that are going to be important are natural materials, materials that engender harmony and a sense of well-being with ourselves, with our homes, with our social connections, and with the environment. Transparency, both figuratively and literally. So glass, something we can see through, and natural colors. In the home decor, natural colors accented with blues, with golds, with greens. Examples that I showed here. And in the fashion accessories, we want to feel good, we want to feel happy, we want to feel connected socially. So here, neutral colors, whites, ivories, beiges, blacks, but with those bright pops of color that make us feel good, that make us happy, make us cheerful. Colors that lift the spirit. So bright accents, blended colors rather than red, yellow, blue, oranges and purples and such instead. Prints and textures that reflect individual identity, uniqueness, yet part of a community, and multidimensional complexity. So please don't look for that, what's the right color to use? Think in terms of, for the home decor, the things that will bring harmony and comfort and peace. For the fashion accessories, things that will bring us joy and pleasure and a sense of connectedness with our fellow human beings. So with that, I want to go ahead and pass the microphone to the next speaker. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Margaret Bishop. That was very enlightening. And we want to invite the next speaker. And this is going to be Julia. So I want to invite Julia. Julia Wilson is a sourcing and logistics manager at Jaspri Trading Limited, based in Durban, Southern Africa. She has worked for buying and product sourcing companies for 36 years and has a wealth of experience across the product board. Julia has worked with several USA retailers, mainly focused on home decor products. Julia sources and supports buying of some of the most beautiful and decorative curios, artifacts, ceramics, and baskets that are made in Africa. She has led numerous buyer sourcing trips to all regions in Africa, As the buyer's representative, she works closely with all partners in the supply chain, particularly the vendors, in order to find ways of working to benefit all parties and to maintain sustainable business relationships for very many years. Welcome, Julia.
Thank you. Hope everyone can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you, Julia.
Okay, great. So my presentation is more focused on the buyers and the buyers that I work with and what they're looking for. So really to start by saying that they're always looking for something new, new opportunities, new vendors, new products, once or twice a year, some of the buyers. And of course, they always say to me, well, what's new? What's happening? What's going on? Who's doing what? So for me, the first thing I say to the vendors is, what's the next thing? What's happening? It's vital that current and new vendors keep an eye on worldwide trends and try to interpret into their own product. So going back to what Margaret was saying about keeping up to date with trend presentations, looking at colors, looking at new opportunities. So the vendors that I work with on a regular basis, they provide me or keep me posted, keep me updated with very clear and concise information. In order to keep the US buyers abreast of what's happening in Africa, I have to supply them with photographs, information, and should be against a plain background so that we can see the product really, really clearly. Lifestyle photos as well are also a good idea. And what I mean by lifestyle is see the product in its sort of environment. So put a basket on a table, put a table runner on a table, and then set the table around it so that the buyers can actually visualize the product. We're always asking for very precise information like the item name, a reference number so that we know what we're talking about, action, and where it's made, etc. And that all relates back to what Margaret's just been explaining in her presentation. This whole sort of line of where products come from, who's made it, etc., is becoming more and more important to the buyers and then to the end customer. Going on from product concise information, for me, accurate costings are essential. They're in their jobs to procure the best product for the best price to enable them to get the best retail profit. So it's imperative that you as a vendor work out your accurate costings for each item being showed to a buyer. Understand how much your raw materials cost, any utilities used. By that I mean electricity, water, gas, or any utilities that might be used in the manufacturing of the product, what wages you have to pay the artisans, and what are the freight costs, etc., that come into playing, included into the price, including exchange rate calculations and, of course, your profit. Also make sure that you know the minimum of units you can accept, and if you can offer a better price if the buyer buys over a certain threshold. So that's really important as well. If a buyer only buys 20 of an item, maybe they're $5. If they buy 50 of an item, maybe you can source the raw materials a little better and your prices can come down, which then makes it obviously more attractive to the buyer. You will probably negotiate on prices from your suppliers. So make sure you're comfortable if you're asked to drop a price. You may be be able to ask the buyers to increase units. So you may say, well, I can do this price, but you have to buy 100 units or whatever. And then, or I can do that price, but can you buy 50 units of this style as well to make it more attractive to you? So don't be afraid to negotiate. Just to bear in mind, if your costs are too high, they won't be able to buy. They have to be able to retail the product at a certain price. And if they can't do that, they're always interested to hear how items are made, what the products are made from, and the different processes used to give the different finishes. So understand every single aspect of your product and be able to tell the buyers that when you're chatting to them, when you're negotiating with them. it helps them understand why a product is a certain price or what goes into it. The have any significance, anything that tells the story of the item, the region, the people who make it, the families supported by a project, etc. The buyers absolutely love to hear the background of a product or an area it's made, etc., etc. This is a great opportunity to put all of this information onto a hang tag to attach to each item. It helps the buyer sell the items to their customers. But importantly, it gets your story out into the world and shows the customer that they're buying a piece of Africa. And this is really important. We've been told time and time again that when the customers, and again, going back to Margaret's presentation, made, how things are made, who they're made by, etc. So if you can tell that in a story on a hand tag, that gets the customer excited. The more the customer buys, the more the buyer will come back to our region and buy more product. Get to know the clients, get to know who you're working with. So I work as a buyer's agent for several store groups. Research those store groups before you chat to me or before you actually meet a buyer. That'll help you see where your product will fit in. Try to research the different store groups, that many questions as possible regarding how your product could fit in. Some buyers can buy up to 3,000 stores, but often they buy special items for their top 50 or 100 stores. Some buyers have a very small retail base. There are lots of options and different opportunities. So for every sort of product, maybe you just sell it to a buyer for their 20 stores. Maybe if you're making or weaving lots of baskets, you can offer to sell to 200 stores. Ensure that you're knowledgeable regarding units per day you can produce, the finish, the labeling, and the packing. Your product lead times, in other words. So if a buyer, for instance, I have some orders at the moment, is about 12 to 13 weeks. So from when we place the order to when we ship, that's what we call a lead time. And the vendors, they work out how many units they can produce during that period so that the buyer can accurately place an order. So a vendor might say, well, we can do 50 units a day. We're working 5 days a week. That's 250 units times 10 weeks, 2,500 units. So that's how we work out what the buyer should hopefully be placing. So share all this information with me and the buyer so that they can work out how many units they can buy from you. Each retailer has their own requirements regarding export packaging and logistics. So make sure you understand how they want things packed, how they want things cartoned, how things need to be labeled. This is as important as the actual product. Now, since I started in this business 30 odd years, I'm too frightened to say, in those days, it didn't really matter so much how goods were packed, except obviously they had to be packed beautifully so they didn't break or get damaged in the shipping. Nowadays, we have to pack. It's really, really important that if we place orders, that you discuss with me about the packing and understand from the buyer how they want things packed, because this can severely impact your costing and also can create huge discrepancies down the line if goods arrive in their warehouses and they're not packed properly. Then they have to unpack everything, and if you think that they're dealing with, I don't know how many thousands of cartons a day in their warehouses, but it's a lot. And this can have a serious financial impact for the client if the goods aren't packed properly. Another aspect, understand the shipping terms. You know, the people that I work for, they have a website that is loaded with information and very clearly sets out the different shipping terms and who pays for what, in terms like FCA, free consolidator at, FOB, free on board. There are lots of different international shipping terms. So really make sure you understand the term that the buyer is looking for and what you are required to pay for in that process. And each retailer has their own freight forwarder. So just because you've dealt with one freight forwarder at a port, the processes may be totally different for the understand the freight forwarder is. They have their own requirements. Almost everything is done online now. So you have to make sure that someone in your organization is able to go onto line and do online bookings, etc., and probably understand a whole web booking sequence. So that's also very, very important. Finance. And this is probably one of the hardest things that any of our African vendors have to work out, is how they finance orders. Smaller retailers were able to come along and maybe put down a deposit and work with vendors to help finance the orders. In the case of my clients now, those days are absolutely gone. Most retailers these days cannot put down a deposit, and vendors must finance their own orders. And this is because the retailers now, they are in the business of retail and they're not money lenders, if you like. They're not able to lend one vendor money and then not sometimes. But it's very, very important to get good financial backing in place and have that securely there, so that when you're talking to a buyer about orders, you know that you can finance the orders. And when we say finance, it's not just the money, it needs to be long-term finance as well. And going back to what I said a few minutes ago, the cycle of an order. So when we place an order, it can be at least 12 to 16 weeks before we ship it. So the order has to be financed for that. Unfortunately, due to COVID, my client used to pay net 30 days, which means that goods were paid for 30 days after they were received at their freight forwarders. Due to COVID and the long-term financial implications that the COVID pandemic is having around the world for everybody, the payment terms are now net 60 days. So a vendor like yourselves may be required to finance an order of upwards of 6 months. So you need to understand the implication that a portion of the FOB price will go into financing fees. And it's really, really important that finance is taken into consideration. And vendors need to be aware of each retailer's payment terms. So as I said, at the moment, my clients are paying 60 days after receipt of goods at the freight forwarders, but other clients may have different requirements. Some may be able to pay quicker than that. Others may need 90 or 120 days. So it's really important that you understand the finance implications of each particular client. As I've said, things have changed so much in the years that I've been involved in as a buyer's agent in Africa. And going back to Margaret's presentation, she highlighted some of the stringent import rules and regulations, the paperwork, the testing that has to be done, etc., etc. And this becomes real when we ship, because as soon as an order is ready to go, not only is it the invoice and the packing list, but it's all the accompanying paperwork, the official customs paperwork that has to also accompany the order. Include some testing forms, GSP forms, AGOA forms, completed forms if it's apparel and textiles, So you as a vendor must ensure you're familiar with what's expected. Obviously on clients' websites, it does list all the forms that are supposed to accompany a shipment, but really it's your job to understand what's expected and provide that documentation. Very often it's prior to a shipment leaving as well. In terms of wood in the Lacey Act, that has to be approved. If our orders get impounded in the US because it doesn't have the right documentation, that is a big problem, because your order may only be part of a container, but the whole container will get impounded and then has to be opened and checked. And the cost implications for the client are huge. And unfortunately, these days, they have to pass that back on to the vendors. So if the documentation's not correct, your shipment can't go. So that's also as important as the product. But on the positive side of gestures, etc., don't be afraid to communicate this to a buyer's agent such as myself, because anything discussed up front is a problem solved or an issue discussed and put to bed prior to an order leaving or prior to even getting an order. So it's really good to keep channels of communication open. If you've got any questions, it's always good to chat up front. But please keep all communication short, direct and concise. Very often buyers can get upwards of 300, 400, 500 emails a day. As a buyer's agent dealing with probably 50 or 60 vendors in the African region, I can also get 100 of other service providers. So it's really great to keep just what is it you need, and we'll try and get back to you really quickly. And in conclusion, I hope the information that you've heard so far hasn't put you off wanting to export, because obviously exporting products has massive rewards. In conclusion, the US buyers are looking for long-term relationships. We have vendors that we've been working with 15, 20 years. So obviously if goods sell, the buyers will come back, but they want to buy the right products at the after all, everyone's in business. And if everything sells well, they'll come back and buy again. They're always looking for new vendor partnerships. So keep agents such as myself updated as to what you're doing. And good luck. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Apologies for the challenges that we'd had with my colleague projecting that, but it's well. I just want to ask the presenters who have just presented, Julia and Margaret Bishop, to turn on their video and microphones on. Jane Ohas, kindly have your video off, so that then if there are any questions, we can direct them to our two presenters very quickly.
I saw one question in the chat area about the certifications that are required. And let me say that they vary according to the raw materials, the product category, and the claims that you as the producer are making.
All right. You wanted to add something, Bishop?
Sure, I can go ahead and just say a couple words more. You know, an example would be that if you are claiming something is organic, then you need to be able to provide certification that it is in fact organic. If not, you should not make that claim. In the case of certain raw materials, you may need to be required either by law or by a buyer to show, for instance, that your wood is Forest Stewardship Council certified. Some buyers require WRAP certification for sewing facilities. So it is specific to the product, the raw materials, and the category. And again, any claims that you as the vendor make.
Yeah, so I want to invite the second set of our speakers, and I want to request my colleague, Mary Stella, kindly upload the slides so that we can invite our other speaker. Yes, so I want to welcome our third speaker, who is Timothy Mulongo. Timothy is a trade and commodity finance specialist with over 14 years of experience in banking operations, trade finance, business development, and structured trade and commodity finance. And over the years, Mulongo has acquired extensive training in trade finance and structured trade finance products, as well as services. Welcome very much, Timothy.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that introduction. A very good morning to those in the US and good evening to those in East Africa. Yes, so I'm here to talk about finance and how we can put more working capital into your businesses. So KCB is the largest bank in Eastern Africa, providing various financing solutions to our customers. So we've got, we are present in 7 countries within Eastern Africa. We have 359 branches across the countries where we have presence. We have a total of 25.2 million customers, which is, quite sizable. We have advanced loans of almost 600 billion to the customers within the markets that we operate. Yeah, so we say we lead in this market and others follow. So some of the countries that we are present in are Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda, South Sudan, Burundi, both English speaking and French speaking Burundi. And we also have a representative office in Ethiopia, and we'll be looking to enter the Ethiopian market in the future. Among the solutions that we offer to our small and medium enterprise clients are, short-term loans that would be, very suitable for the nature of business that you do. We do purchase order financing. We also do invoice discounting. So for purchase order financing, when you have an order from a client and you need money to purchase raw materials or finished goods to be supplied, then we would come in and finance a percentage of that order. Let's say, like, for example, you have an order for $10,000. We would be able to give you up to $6,000 to be able to buy inputs, supply the inputs, and wait to get paid. So when you get paid by your buyer, then we recover our loan from the payment that you receive from the buyer. We also offer long-term loans of up to 60 months. And this is especially for people who are looking to enhance cash flows within their businesses, or if you're looking to enhance cash flows within your business, or you're also looking to buy fixed assets, then we can give you loans of up to 60 months. We also have a very special product for women entrepreneurs, where we give you facilities of up to a maximum of 10 million shillings unsecured. 10 million shillings is about $100,000 unsecured. And this is specifically for women entrepreneurs who have been banking with us and they've been running their businesses for a minimum of 3 years, and the businesses are successful. So we can be able to finance you anytime you have an order, and you pay back the bank when you receive payment from your buyer. We also have asset financing solutions. This is especially when you want to buy assets for your business, machines, or vehicles for transporting your goods. We also have a club, a club called Biashara Club for SMEs, which gives customers networking opportunities and business advisory services. Yeah, so those are just about some of the many solutions that we could offer to your businesses. So I was invited here specifically to speak about trade finance, and trade finance is financing of trade finance basically means financing and facilitation of trade. So we offer financing solutions to traders, people who are in the business of buying and selling, and we also offer solutions that enable our customers to mitigate certain risks in as far as buying and selling of goods, particularly in overseas markets, is concerned. Yeah, so the key thing to look out for when you're trading with your clients is the trading terms. And yeah, the earlier speaker talked about the trading terms you need to be aware. So when you're executing a contract of sale, you as the seller, you need to have certain goals that you want to achieve. And of course, the buyer will also have the goals that they want to achieve. So the buyer will push you on 60-day terms. Some of them will even go as far as 90, 120-day terms. But then the question you should be asking yourself is, what impact does this have on your cash flow? And will you have challenges financing future orders as you wait for a buyer that you have already supplied to pay you? So you need to negotiate with the buyer and agree on terms that are suitable to your business. And this majorly depends on who has more leverage. If you're dealing with a large buyer, then they have more leverage during the negotiation. It also depends on your relationship with the buyer. If you have a good relationship with the buyer, you have always met their terms, and you have supplied them on time, and you can push them to reduce the number of days in which they will settle the payments to you. It also depends on the relative size of the buyer. If you are a large seller and you are larger than the buyer, then you can be able to push the buyer to accept your terms. It also depends on the size of the contract, and we will see that as we go along in this presentation. The larger the size of the contract, the more important you need to decide which method of payment to use. And it also depends with country regulations. I know if you wanted to import into a country like Ethiopia, then you must issue a letter of credit. Otherwise, you will not be allowed to import any goods into Ethiopia. So, yeah, regulations of the country would also matter. Yeah, so the key features of our trade finance solutions at KCB are, number one, to mitigate risk. And we are looking at settlement risk on the part of the seller. You want to be sure that you will get paid by the buyer when you supply them goods. And we're also looking at performance risk. The buyer will want to be sure that when they give you a contract to supply them, then you supply them goods of the right quality at the right time, because they also have markets that they need to supply to, and they need to meet demand. You also need to look at country risk, foreign exchange risk. Good thing with exporting into the US is there is minimal foreign exchange risk, because the dollar is, you'll get paid in dollars, and the dollar is the main currency that people around the world trade in. You need to be sure that you have met the documentary requirements. All documents required need to be obtained and presented for you to be able to get paid. And yeah, we also provide finance to exporters. Yeah, so in the next slide, we'll be looking at the various methods of payment. One of them would be, cash in advance, and this is so the various methods of payment under international trade would be, we've got cash in advance, and this is where the buyer pays you cash before you supply them goods. But this method is not popular. This method is not popular with the buyers because of the risks. They could send you the cash and not receive goods of the right quantity and quality, or receive the goods late. So it's not popular with buyers. The other method is open account. Sorry, so yeah, these are the various methods. So we've got cash in advance, where the supplier receives cash before they ship the goods, but I said it's not popular with buyers. Then we have open account, where the supplier will ship the goods and wait for payment. And this method is also unfavorable for suppliers because I mean, it has an impact on your cash flow, and there is uncertainty of getting paid or receiving your payments, especially if you're dealing with buyers that you're not familiar with. We also have documentary collections, which are not very common, and we also have the letter of credit. The letter of credit is specifically recommended where you're supplying large orders and the buyer is not willing to pay you cash, and you as a supplier are not willing to supply the goods before getting your payment. So what happens is the buyer will request the bank to issue a letter of credit, and the letter of credit undertakes to pay the supplier if the supplier supplies the goods and they prepare and present shipping documents that comply with the LC terms. So in this scenario, the bank that issues the letter of credit will guarantee the supplier payment if they ship the goods and they meet the documentary conditions that are stipulated in the LC. So this is one of the ways that you can use to negotiate terms with buyers, especially when you're handling large contracts. And risk here is minimal as opposed to open account, where you send your goods to the buyer and then wait for the buyer to pay you at a future date. And then the other advantage with LCs is banks are also willing to discount letters of credit. So if your buyer has issued you with a letter of credit instrument, then it becomes very easy for you to get financing from your local bank. And also immediately after supplying the overseas buyer, if you had payment terms of say 60 days with the buyer, you can go to your bank and get the LC discounted, and you receive your payment immediately after supplying and shipping the goods. Yeah, I wanted to delve more into letters of credit because this is the most secure form of payment under international trade, though not common for small purchase orders. It's recommended for orders of $20,000 and above. Yes, so I mean the buyer's bank will issue the LC in favor of the supplier, and I just want to look at the characteristics. It guarantees payment provided the terms and conditions of the LC are fulfilled, and it also provides a form of security to the trading parties in the sense that the seller is guaranteed payment after shipping the goods, and the buyer, on the other hand, does not need to remit payment in advance. They issue an LC, and then once you fulfilled your obligations to supply to the buyer, then the buyer's bank will pay you. Yes, and letters of credit are subject to uniform customs and practice. These uniform customs and practice are published by the International Chamber of Commerce. So the customs and practice under letters of credit are uniform and applicable worldwide. Yeah, so that's how an LC works. It's a bank-to-bank instrument. We will have an issuing bank, which is the buyer's bank, and we will have an advising bank, which is the seller's bank. So the buyer will approach his bank will issue an LC. If you bank with KCB, then the LC will be sent to KCB. And when we receive the LC, we will advise you that we have received an LC from your buyer. After receiving the letter of credit, then you will, ship the goods to your buyer and prepare all the documents required under the LC. Typically, this would be the shipping documents, airway bill, bill of lading, commercial invoice, packing list, certificate of origin, and any other certifications that may be required. So when we receive your documents, we will send them to the buyer's bank. And upon receipt of the documents by the buyer's bank, the buyer's bank is expected to pay you immediately, or if you had agreed on deferred payment terms with your supplier, then the buyer's bank will undertake to remit payment to you or to KCB when the payment is due, and the payment will be honored without any delays. Yeah, so why choose KCB? KCB has got over 200 correspondent banks globally with very solid relationships with these banks, and we can be able to send your LC to any of those banks worldwide. We've got specialized and experienced staff to guide and advise our customers. So anytime you are facing a challenge and you need a solution, please talk to us. We will be able to talk to you and advise you on how to mitigate some of the risks associated with international trade. Yeah, and our processes are quite efficient. We will not delay anything. We will issue or advise your letters of credit within reasonable time. Yeah, so these are just some of the solutions that we could offer to exporters. We have a solution called pre-export financing. So pre-export financing would be more like what I earlier talked about, LPO finance, where you have an order and you need financing from the bank. So whenever you have an order, please talk to us and we'll be able to guide you on the most appropriate solution depending on the size of the order and who you are supplying, your relationship with the buyer, and whether the buyer is willing to cover you with a letter of credit or not. Invoice discounting is about giving you cash against invoices that are to be paid at a future date. So if you have supplied customers and you're waiting to get paid because you have specific terms with those buyers, then instead of just sitting on the invoice for you to get paid before you supply your next order, you can come to us and we discount the invoice and pay you as we wait for your buyer to honor their payment. Yeah, and this is also more or less similar to bill purchase and account receivable financing. We also have warehouse receipt financing, but this would be applicable to very large orders. Yeah, so if any of you are handling very large orders of huge sums of money, then we can also talk about warehouse receipt financing. Yes, we are KCB. We are present in Eastern Africa, and we are ready to handle your transactions and work with you to grow your export business. And yeah, we can be reached at KCB. This is the email that you can reach us on. You will receive these slides, and the first slide has my contacts. You can always reach out to me whenever you have any financing needs that KCB will be able to step in and assist. Thank you. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Timothy. And I think there are questions that are already coming, like one from Christy. I'm sure we'll get some minutes after the end of this for you to respond to. I want to change gears a bit, and we want to invite Tom. Tom McGregor is originally from the UK. He is a co-founder of two non-profit organizations, that is Azizi Life Incorporated US and Ubuzima Bwiza Iwachu from Rwanda, and 4 social enterprises, that is Azizi Life Limited, Azizi Life Experiences Limited, Beautiful Creations, and Total Care Limited. Tom is a professionally qualified chartered insurance broker, but he left the insurance world in 2007 to focus on business development in Rwanda. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. Yes, I started life as an insurance broker in the UK, but in 2007, through a number of different twists and turns, I found myself in rural Rwanda with a development organization called Food for the Hungry. And their vision is very similar to Azizi Life's today. Their vision was to see all people that they're working with in all the communities just thrive and get to physical and spiritual wholeness. And we continue in that trend today. So I was working with Food for the Hungry in small business development. And if we can pop to the next slide, one thing that we noticed in the small business development in rural Rwanda was that we had these cooperatives that were well organized. They had their, their accounts and everything done really well. And they were producing these beautiful products, but they just weren't sustainable businesses. The trouble was, and the struggle was, they just couldn't access the market. The problem at that time was that most of the products were purchased by their neighbors or from the local market, and they were paying little more than the raw material costs. So we realized that if we worked with these artisans and acted as a bridge to get their products to the outside world, to the export market, we could pay a higher price for them, and their businesses would become sustainable, and they could then spend money within their rural community too. And so that's where we started with Azizi Life, as acting as that bridge. Since that day, we've grown into a group of companies. We now made up of the craft business. We sell, we export, but we also sell locally. We also do activities, tourist activities, where we take people out to visit the artisans, and they learn how to do the weaving and they learn about life there. And then we've also more recently started working with beekeepers and doing wax products, candles, honey, and cosmetics. The only reason I mention it here is that what we found with this combination, it's not going to work for everyone, but what we found with this combination is that when you have people coming to visit the artisans, they then become your spokesperson around the world. So they're posting on social media, they are writing blogs, they're telling their friends about it, they're even shopping online when they get home to their home countries. And so we found that, and with the local shops, your local store in Rwanda, buyers who have been coming to Rwanda to look for something new and interesting have popped into our store and they've seen our products there on display, and we've made good connections that way. And so although it might not be for everyone, we found this kind of mix as really helpful. So we're now working with over 500 artisans. And when we first started, because we didn't form any of the artisan groups ourselves, we had a vast array of different products, all beautiful. But over that time, we found that it was important to focus down. We've still got a bit of focusing to do. But it's important that you kind of have chosen who you're going to be targeting, who you're going to be marketing your products to. If you try to do everything for everyone, then there's the danger of not doing anything very well. And so if you can kind of focus your offering down to your target market, and for us, our target market was these kind of ethical, socially conscious homeowners. And so that's who we're picturing when we're looking at our products and our product offering. And so people that love the story and but also love design. And one thing I will mention here is that, we're very strong on the story side of it. We've got a lot of community projects that we do. We're fair trade registered. So we're very strong on that aspect. However, that's not enough in the modern market. You need to produce a product that's high quality. So the story will get your foot in the door. The story will actually differentiate you, but you also need that really high level of quality of product. And without that, then you run the risk of just either getting the one-off sale or no sales, because people do really care about what they're putting in their home, and home decor is where we're focused. And so what we do with quality control, because we work with these artisan groups, they're all spread out in the villages, but when we get a new product, we get the group together that we're going to work with on this product, we sit down and we talk through the design aspects, the quality aspects, and we spend a lot of time kind of getting that right. They then go away and they produce the basket or whatever we've asked them to produce, and then they come back with that. And in that first instance, we'll buy everything. We'll buy everything that they've made, no matter what the quality is, because we don't want the artisans to lose heart, because they've worked for maybe 2 or 3 days on this product. So if they get nothing on that first time, then they're going to give up and they won't want to work with you. But what we find is that we then, sit down again with the group and we're showing where all of the improvements need to be done. And then over a period of weeks or months, we become stricter and stricter and stricter until we're only accepting the high quality products. Our artisan partners are more than welcome to go and sell their products elsewhere. But they, we only buy the high quality products, because once you start accepting the low quality products, if you're not strict, then it's a kind of a downward spiral, because the artist, it's much easier to make a low quality product. It takes less time, it takes less care, and so that so you can end up causing yourself, by being too soft, you can cause yourself a lot of difficulty. So with our relationships with our artisans, we have to really balance that out, because we've got these strong relationships. So if they're having a bad time, we want to make sure they get some money for all of their work they've done, but at the same time we don't want to kind of encourage that lower quality work, and so that's a real difficult balancing act. And then obviously with the product, you don't want it to get destroyed on the way to the market, but it was touched on before by Julia about packaging. Packaging is about protecting the product, but it's not the only aim. There's also the customer experience as they unwrap that box and they see the beautiful product inside. But it starts with the box itself, and you don't have to have fancy packaging. I mean, it can be a selling point for you to have recycled boxes. A box comes from Ethiopia with 100 different stamps on it. It's in a recycled box. There's banana leaf nestling the product, or ibitenge. And that can be part of the experience and really help sell it. And obviously the packaging needs will vary depending on who you are selling your product to, who your buyer is. And so you can work with your buyer to really come up with something that works well for them and for you. So these are just some of the products. You can see more of our products on azizilife.com. So I just wanted to touch briefly on sales and marketing. This will vary very much depending on who you're speaking to and who you're targeting, and kind of like what type of buyer you are going for, whether it's a big buyer or a smaller buyer or a direct to the customer at the end. But what we found, and is probably an absolute minimum, is to have a good, clear website with decent pictures and information on. Use your social media. It's free, but it is time consuming, as you have to keep feeding that social media monster with more content each and every day. We've also tried some trade shows in the past, and we have been less effective with that. And so we found actually investing more in the good photography, more in the social media, more in the email marketing was actually better for us than the trade show was, for a kind of cost and return. And so again, that very much depends on kind of who you're targeting, and you'll have to kind of feel your way and kind of constantly review what's working for you and what's not. With all of these things, there's always challenges. There's difficulties. There's a million different difficulties and challenges in your supply chain. But the ones I want to look at today, it's just a couple of slides on those, just trying to kind of go through this as quickly as possible, because I know it's been a long afternoon. Is buyer expectation and lead times. This has been touched on by Julia earlier on. But communication with your buyers is really key. In an age of instant messaging, people want to hear from you straight away. I mean, even if it's just a case of thank you for your email, I'm looking into it, I'm going to get back to you. That's really important to do that, to kind of keep that level of communication going, and to not leave the buyer kind of just waiting there wondering what's happening. And the other thing about buyers is that they don't always communicate clearly the other way. And so you have to kind of learn a way of teasing the information out of your buyers. So a classic example of this is, for example, on our website, we've got baskets. So if a buyer comes to me and says, we would like that basket that you've got on your website, we want 1,000 of those, but we want, instead of the colors you've got on your website, we want red and white. Now that sounds like an easy thing to do. So you've got the design, they're already making, you just have to change the color to red. However, there are like 100 different possible reds. And the red that I have in my mind is not the same red, or it may not be the same red as the buyer has in their own mind. And so what we've come to do is we're using Pantone colors. So we have a book of Pantone colors, and we'll look up the red that we think that the buyer wants, and then we'll send them the number. And so the buyer has their own Pantone colors, and they can look up and they can see, yes, that is the color, or no, I would prefer this number instead. Now we use the Pantone colors instead of taking photographs and sending them, because there can be some variations with electronic imagery when the photo of what you're taking isn't exactly what the person sees at the other end. And so that level of clarification on color helps, but I'm just using that as an example of the kind of things that you might have in your mind that you think the buyer has in their mind, but they're not matching. So you kind of have to look at different ways as you're communicating to try and kind of bridge that gap, so that you're both talking from the same song sheet, so you're both understanding each other. And so I'd encourage lots of if you talk on the phone, follow up with something in writing, send regular updates, send little photos, keep them involved so anything can be caught earlier on. And the next part of that is communication with your suppliers. So your artisans, you want to build really strong relationships with your suppliers. Explain what you want very clearly. What we found with the majority of artisans is that it's difficult for them to see on paper and through conversation exactly what you want. However, if they can physically see the item, if they can feel the item, then you're much more successful. So you can engage the work of an expert artisan to make that first prototype, and then you show that to the other artisan groups for when you start production. But it's that level of, you'd have to, it varies because each supplier is as different as people are in this world. And so just work out with your own suppliers, what's good, what's communicating, what's working, and review what you're doing. So when there's been a mistake, look back through your communication and say, okay, that didn't work. Why didn't that work? What worked in this process? Kind of go back through the experience and think, okay, this was good, this was bad, and this is what we could do differently next time. And then always check in with your supplier regularly, speak with them, do rolling quality control. Don't wait to the end to discover that they've done everything in the wrong color, but try and meet with them more regularly. And then there is the accurate estimates. Be really accurate. Don't overpromise or underpromise. I think Julia touched on this before. Try and be as honest as possible and as accurate as possible. And I know this is really difficult with handmade items. We suffer with this as well. So we kind of go on our past experience of what we've made. You kind of have to look at the orders that you've got in at that time as well. So when the buyer calls you, you could say, well, we can do 2,000 units, but then you get another big order and you can't do 2,000 units anymore. So you need to be very clear with your buyers about, if you place the order today, this is how long it would take. But if we get other orders in, then this change might, our lead times may change, and they may not be as they may not be like this. They may be faster or they may be slower. The other thing that we found is that we have our regular artisans that we work with. So when we've got a big order, we had a really big order come in recently. Now, we didn't want to lose the big order, but our lead times would be very long with our existing artisans. And so we were able to say to the buyer, well, with our existing artisans, it will take us a month to make 10,000 baskets. However, if you give us 2 months or 3 months, then we can go and train other artisans. So we've got a network of partner artisans who don't work with us regularly, but we know where they are. And then we say we could go and train those to do your specific product, and then we can increase what we can produce to maybe 30,000 or 40,000 to meet that order. So that kind of flexibility, if you're able to build it in with partnerships with people you trust, then that's really helpful for kind of growing your business. Getting your timings right, and your pricing, which Julia touched on as well, getting that exactly right is going to result in happier buyers, happier customers, and repeat business. The next slide is talking about limited resources and logistical nightmares. When we first started in Rwanda, 10, 12 years ago, it was really difficult to get a lot of stuff. We had to be really creative and with what we were buying, because we always wanted to buy local. But if you're unable to buy local, then you'll need to kind of factor in the time to import those specific tags or the specific packaging that your buyer needs. So again, communicate that with them very clearly. Remember to get it in your pricing if you're going to have to import stuff. And remember, when you import things, there's kind of tax and other things that have to be bared in mind. And also on the sending side, your labeling, you need to get that right. I know with a Go agreement with our products, each product has to be labeled with made in Rwanda. And I know there's much more strict rules if you're sending kind of clothing and fabric items. And so just kind of research your labels, get those all right. Another nightmare that we've all faced is shipping. For us in Rwanda, the shipping, if it's under 100 kilos, then it's just easier, cheaper to work directly with the carriers like the post office or DHL or FedEx or one of those. Once you go over 100 kilos from Rwanda, then you're better off working directly with the airline. And working with the airline is great. It brings the prices down. But for Rwanda, you need to have a shipping agent that will help you get the products on the plane, and then a shipping agent at the other side. And so you have to build up those relationships with your shipping agent. So finding a good shipping agent the moment you get to kind of air freight size. And then obviously if you're doing the very big orders, then air freight is very expensive and you want to move to the sea containers. But then you have to bear in mind the timing. You know, your buyer might not want to wait 3 or 4 months for the products to get there by sea. They may be willing to pay the premium to go with the air freight, which will get there in a few weeks. And so you just need to keep communicating, get good agents, build up those relationships, and yeah, and then you can get the best solution, put the solutions out, but know what your options are. And then lastly, getting paid. This has been covered before by Timothy and Julia. It's important you make it as easy as possible for buyers, but you have to factor in all those fees and the interest rates and the short-term financing options. You can have different terms for different buyers. I know with the Fair Trade Federation in the US, one of their principles is to offer producers at least 50% up front. I don't know if that still applies, but not all of your buyers will be fair trade. So you'll just have to work with them. And I just encourage you to be as honest as possible. Just like if you're going to say, we can't do it for that price, it's just not physically possible for us. Or if we do it for that price, we're going to pay this much in financing and it's going to cost this much extra. So kind of work with your buyers to just get the right mix on that. But yeah, so that was just very quickly the kind of some of the challenges and things that we faced. And so the next slide, I think, is just questions, and I'm happy to answer those. And if you ever have any questions that you want to just kind of ping me an email, I'm happy to talk specifics with you. So just let me know. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Tom. That was a really, really informative session on developing a supply chain for home decor exports, and you shared an experience from Rwanda. Thank you. That is quite informative. Now we want to listen to Lillian. Lillian is from Uganda, and she'll be talking to us about promoting traditional Ugandan baskets to the modern US home decor market. And just to introduce Lillian, she works with Uganda Crafts 2000 Limited, which is a fair trade private company, as the sales marketing manager, where she has been for over 15 years. Lillian works with more than 350 artisans from all over Uganda. Her company creates sustainable income for the disadvantaged, especially the differently abled, single mothers, widows, HIV positive, and the youth through craft production. And as we welcome Lillian, I just want to ask Naima to share the link of our feedback form. As we come to the end of this session, as I mentioned, we'll be requiring you to share your feedback with us. So Naima, kindly share that link with at the chat, and you can copy that link. And after Lillian shares, and as we get to the end of this session, you'll be taking a minute or two to fill. So kindly, karibu sana Lillian, welcome.
Thank you so much for that introduction. Good morning and good evening, everyone. I'll start with the background of Uganda Crafts. It was opened in 1983 as an NGO by Marilyn Dodge and Betty Chinene, and it began with approximately 15 artisans. In 1988, Uganda Crafts began exporting to organizations from Canada, Denmark, and England who were ordering in small quantities. And in 1999, we got to export to 10,000 villages in the USA. And these being big buyers, we had to increase on the artisans we work with. And also we had to become fair trade members. And in 2000, we changed from an NGO and we became a private business. Okay, I will just continue. Over the years, the business grew. We became fair trade. The artisan numbers increased, and we began exporting in large numbers, and new clients came in. And then we got to learn a few lessons along the way. And what we learned that for you to really make a name or to get to be known, you have to attend exhibitions, especially the international exhibitions. For instance, like Ambiente. And your attending you don't have to attend only once. You can do this 1 or 2 or 3 times, because the first time the customers are just seeing you for the first time, they won't trust you. The second, they will now recognize you. The third, they are starting to really believe in you. And then the fourth, they have the confidence to sit and order from your booth or even write orders with you. And quality is very good. It's something you have to put into mind when you're making your products, and very essential. And then you have to be consistent with your quality, and then the uniformity, because these are the few things the buyers or the clientele in the home decor section look at. And then you getting registered to organizations or affiliated to organizations like the fair trade organizations gets you some market opportunities. For instance, for Uganda Crafts, it was through fair trade that we really got to 10,000 villages. And even more clients came to know us because we are affiliated to fair trade. And as business people, you've got to know your capacity. How many products do you make per month? How many can you make maybe in a week? And then your production lead time and your price negotiation limits. These are some of the things you have to be knowing before you go into the market of the home decor. The next slide talks about the challenges. And the challenges we really faced was it is very expensive to attend these international exhibitions. For an exhibition, you can spend something approximately like 10,000 euros for just one exhibition. That includes your air ticket, your accommodation, the exhibition space, the storage, the exhibition building of the stalls, and so many costs involved. So it is really very expensive. And the other thing is the competition from China, especially. What they do, they are very good. They have a very keen eye, so they could just look at, for instance, in my case, it's a basket, and they can just photocopy it and produce it in their synthetic materials. So this really is something that hinders the market, because it comes out very cheaply than compared to my handmade product. And then the other bit is the high postage and shipping. This, I could give an example. Right now, the whole world under the pandemic crisis, online sales are doing very well. You can make good business through the online market. But now with the postage from Uganda, for instance, you can sell a basket at $5 and then just the postage cost is $30. At the end of the day, it just doesn't make sense, because the client won't believe it that the basket was $5 and the postage was $30. So that is really a challenge. What you need to know when you're going into the market, the first thing I think is you need to know the international standards. And these you can get from the Goa website. What is required of you if you're going to send in your items to the US market. And then it is very essential for you to get to know the trends. What are the trends? What are the color combinations? What is moving on? What is how do I say it? What are the color combinations and what is popular on the market out there? And then the other, it is very essential for you to know your capacity, because these buyers or these clients really love a person who knows how much they can produce, what time, and how best can it be produced. All this information is very essential before you think of going to the market itself. And still, I will still emphasize the quality. Your quality is something that sells you, and also knowing the price on the market, because it wouldn't be very good for you to overprice or underprice your items. So if you know the price on the market, it helps you to know your negotiation bit. What limit can you go? What could be the extreme in line to your item you're putting out there? And the next slide, I think I talk about how do you promote these items. The first bit would be using social media. With the technology today and the world we are in, I think social media is doing wonders. It comes with its evils, but then it has its good deeds. So I think we need to utilize it. Social media, you could use WhatsApp, Instagram, Twitter, websites. Make sure that you're well represented at all the social media platforms, and have someone who really runs your pages and keeps updating the clientele on what's going on. Then the other bit I really saw essential was the use of mood boards. Mood boards could be like you get your item and display it alongside other items. It could be a basket within maybe a fashion store, but the colors are matching so well. So this gives the person who is in home decor how best they could utilize that particular item. And with these mood boards, you could use them on postcards, flyers, and brochures. Postcards, when you're at exhibition, it's good to have some postcards with you and flyers and brochures, because so many people, there are so many passers-by and so many people that go through exhibition halls. So if you give each and one who passes by a postcard, some will be thrown away, but yes, some will be put to good use and they will always get back to you. And then also attending exhibitions, international exhibitions. But in this case, you have to really know which particular exhibitions to attend. Ambiente is really good for home decor items, and it gives you very good coverage because there's so many people that pass through Ambiente, especially the buyers and the agents themselves. So I think that would be a good platform for you to go to. But then there are also other exhibitions that go in different countries, in the US, that are mainly for home decor items that you could also utilize and attend. And with this, I really believe you can promote your items to the home decor US market. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lillian. Much, much appreciated. We really appreciate taking time to just speak to us about your experience and some of the things that you really need to take to think about as we get into the US market. And so I have actually seen that quite a number of questions have been responded to. I think there is only one that I will ask Margaret Bishop to respond to when she is giving us the way forward and the concluding remarks. And so I actually want to just ask that you take. Yes, Margaret?
Yes, I'd just like to say something. Thank you very much to all the speakers, and I don't want to interrupt Leanne. Thank you very, very much to all the speakers. There are a couple of issues that are coming up in the questions, and I think what I want to reassure the East African vendors, not all buyers are the same. And I think what is very important as you're engaging with the market, look for credible, well-established buyers with a good reputation. So your buyer is your partner. They're not your enemy, all right? They're your partner, your business partner. Look for buyers or try and engage with buyers who you develop a long-term, solid relationship. Okay, so we shouldn't have the attitude that the buyers are out to rip you off. No, it's a buy and sell arrangement. you try and negotiate a good deal for yourself that you can live with, and also provide the buyer with the right value that they're also looking for. The second question I think may arise as to KCB. KCB is an example of a regional commercial bank. But many of the banks in your country, if you're from Tanzania, if you're from Uganda, if you're from Ethiopia, if you're from Rwanda, you'll find other banks in your area who will give you similar products. So the purpose, thank you very much, KCB. One of the purposes of having KCB here is for them to talk as professionals about the products in trade finance. These are the kind of products that are available in commercial banks, including in KCB, which is represented in the region. So don't feel that you only have to use KCB. We thank them for making the presentation, but take that information away, go to your own bank. If you're not able to access KCB wherever you are, or you feel you want to continue with your own bank, please go to your bank and tell them, I've heard about this product, this product, this product. Can you give me that solution? You're my banker, can you help me? All right, so don't feel that you are stuck because you're not with KCB. I'm sure your bank has that product. Maybe you don't have, maybe they don't have all of them, but you should be able to explore those options with your bankers so that you are able to educate yourself and use the products that are available. I'll stop there, but I just wanted to raise those clarity points. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret, for that clarification. And I want now to invite Margaret Bishop to give us a conclusion and the next steps. And even as Bishop comes, I still want to request for your feedback. I am seeing some are trickling in, and I know we are way past time. Just give us a few more minutes. We just conclude this. So Margaret Bishops, the screen is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. And many thanks to all of you who did presentations. We just heard several excellent, very, very informative presentations from people who really have lived and experienced what they're talking about. So thank you so much for that. In terms of just a few summary conclusions, as I was listening to the different presentations, the key points that really stood out to me over and over were the importance of having fresh product that is tightly focused, that has consistently high quality, that complies to the buyer requirements as well as the legal regulations and restrictions, that you need to, as producers, you need to be prepared to self-finance your production and your working capital needs as you wait even up to 6 months or longer for payment from your buyers. I've been hearing of very lengthy payments happening these days due to COVID. And work with your local banks, your regional banks, in the areas where they can assist you with this, as Tom talked about. Tell your story. This ties in not only to the forces I talked about, to making your product much more interesting to consumers, therefore to the wholesale buyers. But Lillian, I believe it was, mentioned the issue of copying by China or Chinese firms. It's not just the Chinese firms, but many different entities will try to copy your product, from photos, from images on your website and so forth. What they cannot copy is your story. They can't copy the things you share about the product, the raw materials, the producers, the heritage of the East African items and skills and so forth. So that storytelling is so very important in so many ways. Prompt and clear communication with your buyers, that protects you and it protects your buyers. And it makes it much easier and much more interesting and much more successful to do business. And that's what you ultimately want to do. And the consistency in participation in things like trade shows. That brings me up to another point, because buyers need to build confidence in you and your products and the traceability and authenticity of your supply chains and so forth. And seeing you just once they are very unlikely to place even a sample order. But that's also where the TradeHub and its activities come into play, because the TradeHub, with some help from me, is shortlisting and already has those companies that have the best potential for the US market. And that's been the reason for this mapping process. It's an ongoing process, so it's not finalized yet, but it also allows us to then try not only promote you to the buyers that we think will be most suitable for you and most interested in your products and your stories and so forth, but then it allows us to also help make those linkages. And there have been a number of questions about linkages in the chat box. So in terms of next steps, we're continuing to do the one-on-one, the company mapping and the one-on-one consultations with each company that has been mapped. We have been working on updating the US market and the exporter's manual about the US market analysis, and the TradeHub will be making that available in the upcoming weeks. We've had this webinar, and you're welcome to watch it again when the recording is posted. We are preparing to host a virtual trade show in the upcoming weeks. And for that, we'll select from the companies that have by that time been mapped and had the consultations, those which are best suited to the buyers that we're able to bring to the virtual trade show. And we will be making those introductions. And for those companies that have been selected for that activity, we'll also be doing some preparation activities with you in advance to make sure that you're knowledgeable about the particular buyer or buyers that you'll meet, and that you know which products to present and so forth. So those are our upcoming activities. Margaret Wateka and Naima and Leanne can give more detail. But from my standpoint, I want to say thank you all very much for participating in this. And for those I haven't met yet, I look forward to it.
Great. Thank you very much, Margaret Bishop. That was a very comprehensive conclusion, as well as the next steps. And I want to invite Margaret Waithaka. Margaret, to just give us like your concluding remarks. I can see forms are still coming in. Please keep those feedback forms coming. We really appreciate that feedback. Margaret.
Thank you very much, Leanne. Thank you very much, everyone, for sticking with us to the end. I really apologize for the technical challenges. And when we work virtually, sometimes you can't predict what will happen, but you have all stuck with it. I want to say a very special thank you to all the speakers. That is Julia Wilson from Just Brew in South Africa, Margaret Bishop from New York, who is our consultant, Timothy Mulongo from KCB Group, Lillian Semiga from Uganda Crafts 2000, and last but not least, Tom McGregor from Azizi Life. I want to appreciate each one of you for the time you've taken to prepare and also to share your unique perspectives, both from the US and from East Africa. I also want to thank our colleagues, Leanne, Naima, and also Mary Stella, who have put this together. But last but not least, I would like to say thank you to the participants who have come on board. And we'd like to encourage you, if you're in this business, and whether you're doing fashion accessories or you're doing home decor and you're from one of the target countries, you've heard which ones they are, please reach out. I've several times put on the chat box Naima's email address. Please reach out to Naima. If you're not already on the program, you still have a little bit of time to join, get mapped and get coached. And we will be starting on the buyer linkages in about a month and a half time. So there's a little bit of time. So thank you very much, everyone. I don't want to keep you too long. We're already 17 minutes over time. But I wish you all the best. A happy Easter. Please get in touch with us and please ramp up your exports to the US and AGOA. Okay. good evening. But over to you, Leanne.
Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you.
And yes, thank
Thank
you.
you all of you.
Please,
This
please
is
have
from
your
Ethiopia.
feedback. Share your feedback with us so that we know how to engage with. Thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate your insights, even in those feedback forms. Thank you.